This weekend, a huge Dungeons & Dragons leak slipped out of Hasbro Wizards. Someone somewhere made a massive mistake, and now information that should not be out in the wild, especially right now, was just leaked by accident. Yikes. Now, this happened at PAX Unplugged last weekend. PAX Unplugged is a huge tabletop gaming event focused on board games, RPGs, miniatures, and has a whole bunch of panels, and a big expo hall where tabletop companies like to make big announcements. And Hasbro Wizards are no different, being one of the biggest tabletop companies in the world. So, surprise, surprise, they had a panel at PAX Unplugged focused on Dungeons & Dragons, and it was called 50 Years of D&D, and it sort of served as a platform for them to reveal the next year of releases in 2024 for Dungeons & Dragons. This was actually pretty jam-packed with new information, and we got a ton of info about what 2024 is going to look like when it comes to D&D. All of this info was slotted into like the last 20 minutes of the hour-long event, and a ton of it was really interesting. For example, they mentioned a distilled one-shot remaster of the very easy to say 1982 Gygax adventure, The Lost Caverns of Tsushkunth. Yeah, think I nailed it. That's a name which once again displays the infamous business savvy of Gygax. SEO wasn't a thing in the 70s. Still though, this is a pretty old famous cavern crawl, and I look forward to seeing how Hasbro Wizards handle the scene where the players visit the Gnomeville. There, the players get to meet the Valley Gnomes, which I can only imagine resemble members of the Sweet Valley High Cast, but you know, small. The panel also talked about Vecna Eve of Ruins, where players will get to face off against Vecna, if you can imagine such a thing. It's not like the last 10 years of D&D media have been solely based on that premise or whatever, but you know, this is the first time that will be coming to print, and it is a big Vecna focused campaign, as you might imagine, and it will probably excite a lot of fans. It's designed to go all the way to level 20, unlike most player characters, but more importantly, it's indicative of the massive push that Hasbro are taking to turn D&D into an IP vehicle. Because it looks like this campaign is going to be all about players traveling the multiverse, meeting famous D&D characters and villains, and fighting Vecna's presumed attempts to assemble all the baddies of D&D history into some sort of supervillain league that resembles the registration queue in Blazing Saddles. There's Strad! I understood that reference, etc, etc. Let's hope it takes off so that all those Hasbro warehouses filled with Warjuke toys finally get some sales. It was also revealed that Quest from the Infinite Staircase will be coming out next year. This is another anthology book with a weird central hook like Tales of the Yawning Portal. I kinda wish that instead of making an 80s anthology show, they would just sell a book with 7 different side quests or whatever and just say, hey, here you go DMs, fit these side quests in where you can. Instead, we're gonna be traversing the Infinite Staircase and going on unrelated adventures. I guess half the time Hasbro sell these books to collectors that will probably never run a game in practice. So, you know, Hasbro need every single adventure book to be the book equivalent of Cat's Eye or whatever and provide a relatively compelling narrative through thread for those not actually playing the game. I don't know. I don't mean to come across too caustic about this panel. I actually really enjoyed it. If I sound caustic about it, that's just because I can't stop my general Irish charm. Now, the big leak happened right after this panel because when it concluded, the Dungeons & Dragons Instagram account dropped a bunch of the usual marketing material. You know the stuff, aspirational pictures of sweaty men and sweatier armor and the like, but they also made a huge mistake because amongst all the marketing guff teasing the new content, they also posted this picture. And this picture reveals none other than the release date of the new edition of Dungeons & Dragons right down to the day. You can see that it says here 2024 core rulebooks releasing on the 21st of May 2024. Well, hey, big news, right? Weird that they didn't mention this at the panel. Well, yeah, that's because this was clearly a huge f*** because it very quickly got taken down and replaced with this identical image that simply has the text, coming soon. Yeah, so they did notice notice and jumped on top of this very fast, much like how fast I will come for you during the Dark Hunt 3 years after the fall if you do not subscribe to this channel right now. Seriously, I'm compiling a list. I can see who watches and who doesn't subscribe. You think you're watching me? I'm watching you. Now, some people are arguing that this date can't be the correct release date because Hasbro Wizards have since deleted all the images making reference to it. But actually, I kind of think that Hasbro Wizards pushing the panic button reinforces that this really is the date. It feels so specific and so plausible that my headcanon is treating this as fact. And in fact, this wasn't the only picture that they released with a release date. They actually revealed all the release dates of everything announced at the panel and then pulled all of those down too. So this looks like a major miscommunication, or at the very least a screw up on their end. And it makes sense that Hasbro Wizards are not ready to reveal the release dates of the new edition just yet, because it'll likely impact sales of any 5th edition content, including the core rules, as dungeon masters and prospective dungeon masters stop buying more 5th edition content in anticipation of the release of a brand new Dungeons and Dragons with brand new adventures and rules coming out in the new year. It's one thing to give a vague 2024 release date, it's quite another to say it's happening in May, especially now in December when Hasbro probably want their wheels sorry, I've been reading too much Hasbro investor materials there. I mean, their favorite dungeon masters to be spending as big and as inhumanly as possible in the run up to Christmas. This really is the most important sales window of the year for most corporations, and it's when most marketing money is spent. That's probably why you're seeing a lot more ads on YouTube right now. At this time of year, any shameless hack can get a sponsorship. Today's video is sponsored by salt. Do you have it in your diet? Do you routinely eat it? Sip the sea. Have a salt, give us money. Try the world's 3rd favorite mineral today. Thanks for sponsoring today's video, Salt. So this is a bit of a buzz up on Hasbro's side then. So spare a thought for the poor fellow in marketing that accidentally dropped these images into Instagram and Twitter, because they're probably in a grey room right now being burned with cigarettes by Chris Cox. But I gotta say, this is really big news for players and dungeon masters. I mean, it's not the craziest news. That would have been Disney announcing a sequel to Song of the South, but it's pretty big. We have known for a really long time now that the new edition is coming out next year, no matter what, even if it's not ready. But we had no idea if it would be released in January or in Christmas 2024. So hearing that it's coming in May means that I might have to move my holiday plans around a little. I was hoping to camp out in my local car park that month, but it's good for players to know this information. Getting a 7-month heads up is neat, and it will likely help dungeon masters start to think about possibly winding down their games in anticipation for the new edition, if that is something they want to do. Also, like mentioned, they won't waste money on the 5th edition rulebook in Christmas. Though, all that said, will dungeon masters even need to consider winding down their games? Arguably not, considering that D&D 6th edition is more of a 5.5 edition, so much so that Hasbro are actually calling the new releases the 2024 core rulebooks, which is a bit disingenuous considering the sweeping changes to classes, but hey, I think they're afraid of losing a lot of momentum that 5th edition has gained in the last few years by switching to a new edition and scaring everyone off, creating the age-old new edition sectarianism that Northern Ireland had to deal with for so long. One second. What do you mean the Troubles wasn't about AD&D? That doesn't gel with what I remember. This also means that playtesting is basically finished for the new books, I guess, because Hasbro Wizards have a cemented release date, and it's pretty soon. So the new books are likely going to the printers soon, if not already there. In fact, this is a little bit worrying because the D&D playtests have been all over the place and generally pretty controversial. Though that said, the latest playtest has been getting a lot of really good reviews from content creators like Treant Monk, especially for the Barbarian and Monk classes, which have been historically pretty problematic. So maybe now is a good time to quit iterating and just push on. Also, interestingly, when Hasbro updated the image to no longer show the release date, they also updated the text in the picture from 2024 core rulebooks to 2024 Player's Handbook, which means that it's likely that the books are going to be a staggered release, just like how 5th edition was launched all those moons ago. But does this mean that we're going to only see the Player's Handbook in 2024? What about the new DMG and the new Monster Manual? Well, either way, we can't say for sure because no one has actually confirmed any of this information officially at the time of recording. But we're likely to find this all out for release date and deets in February next year when Hasbro do their investor call and shamelessly brag about how they're going to wring money out of us all over the next year. Haha, never change, corporate overlords. But what do you think? Are you looking forward to the new edition? Let me know in the comments below and check out this video where I talk about the brand new DM's guide that's coming out, maybe in May, and why I'm worried about the direction that it's taking. It's a little worry. And help support the channel, get the TTRPG news into your eye holes every month by supporting me on Patreon at patreon.com/discourseminis, linked below. And a huge thanks to all my patrons, especially CryptoKev, Novani, and Travis Hunter. Thank you so much, guys. And I'll catch you all next time. Bye-bye!